I was a good man until you decided to make me a monster. Now, brace yourself.
I never imagined my military training would be used against my own wife and her lover, but life has a twisted sense of irony. My name's Marcus, former Army Ranger with 12 years of service under my belt. I'd survived 3 combat deployments, faced enemy fire without flinching, and completed missions most people only see in movies. But absolutely nothing in that experience prepared me for what my 9-year-old daughter, Sarah, brought home on an ordinary Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen preparing dinner while my wife Diana rested upstairs with yet another migraine. These headaches had become disturbingly frequent over the past 6 months, occurring at least twice weekly. Along with them came mysterious bruises she attributed to clumsiness, random dizzy spells, and emergency room visits that happened at least twice monthly. I'd been concerned about her health, supportive, trying to be the understanding husband. Looking back now, I was such an idiot. Sarah walked through the door that evening looking pale and frightened. Her small hands trembled as she clutched her backpack. "Dad, can we talk? Just us?" Her voice cracked with emotion I'd never heard from her before. She glanced nervously toward the staircase where Diana was supposedly sleeping, then pulled me into the garage and closed the door behind us. My daughter's eyes were red-rimmed from crying, and I felt every protective instinct I possessed activate simultaneously. "Promise you won't be sad," Sarah whispered, reaching into her backpack with shaking hands. She pulled out a thick manila envelope folded multiple times. "My friend Katie's mom is Dr. Rachel Thompson. She works at County Medical Center. She saw Mommy at the hospital yesterday." Sarah's voice dropped even lower as tears filled her eyes. "She said I needed to give this to you. She told me to tell you to be smart, be careful, and don't tell anything to Mommy." My mind raced as I took the envelope. Dr. Rachel Thompson was Katie's mother, a well-respected emergency room physician with an impeccable reputation. Why would she pass confidential medical information through a 9-year-old child? The answer hit me immediately because it was the only way to reach me without Diana knowing. I'd noticed gradually over recent months how Diana monitored everything. She'd casually ask who I'd been talking to, check my phone while I showered, insist on handling all our household mail herself. I dismissed it as anxiety or stress. Now I understood it was control. With Sarah watching anxiously, I opened the envelope. Inside were photocopied medical records, handwritten notes, and several photographs. As I read through the documents, my blood turned to ice in my veins. The first report was from 3 weeks prior. Diana had been treated for injuries consistent with domestic violence. Bruises on her arms, a split lip, claims that I'd pushed her down the stairs. The examining physician's name made my jaw clench involuntarily. Dr. Victor Chen. I had never laid a hand on Diana, not once in our 10 years of marriage. The very thought of harming her made me physically ill. But there was more. Page after page of emergency room visits spanning the past 6 months. Each time she'd been treated by Dr. Chen specifically. Each time Diana reported new injuries, new symptoms, systematically building a documented pattern of spousal misuse. There were photographs of bruises from multiple angles, x-rays showing old fractures, psychiatric evaluations claiming I exhibited violent tendencies and suffered from unstable PTSD-related behavior. Everything was fabricated. It had to be. I'd been with Sarah during at least half these supposed incidents. I had alibis, witnesses who could verify my whereabouts. But as I continued reading, I realized with growing horror that none of that mattered. This was a carefully constructed paper trail, thoroughly documented and utterly damning. Any court would look at this evidence and see a clear pattern of misuse. The final document was a handwritten note from Dr. Thompson herself. "Mr. Marcus Hayes, I stumbled upon your wife's medical file accidentally while cross-referencing patient records for a research project. Dr. Victor Chen is my colleague, and I've suspected him of unethical behavior for quite some time. These injuries your wife reported are self-inflicted or completely fabricated. I have evidence she's visited the emergency room 14 times in 6 months, always requesting Dr. Chen specifically, always scheduling appointments when you're at work. I reviewed security camera footage that clearly shows her arriving at the hospital without visible injuries and leaving with bandages and medical documentation. There's more to this situation. I believe there's insurance fraud involved, falsified medical reports, and I'm convinced she's building a legal case against you. Dr. Chen is involved with your wife romantically. I couldn't reach you directly without alerting them to my knowledge. Trust absolutely no one at County Medical except me. Your daughter knows how to contact me through Katie if necessary. Be smart about this. They're planning something major, and I believe it's happening soon. My hands had gone completely numb. I looked at Sarah, whose tears were now flowing freely down her cheeks. "Katie's mom said Mommy is lying," she sobbed. "She said Mommy is trying to hurt you. Dad, I'm really scared about what's happening." I pulled my daughter into my arms while my mind shifted into military operational mode, despite the rage building in my chest. Diana, my wife of 10 years, the woman I'd trusted with absolutely everything, was systematically setting me up for something catastrophic. Probably a restraining order based on fabricated misuse claims. Maybe even criminal charges. Definitely a divorce where she'd claim years of misuse and take everything, including custody of Sarah. And Dr. Victor Chen was helping her do it, not just as her physician, but as her lover. After Sarah went inside to act normal, I stood in the garage reviewing the documents repeatedly. Diana had made one critical tactical error. She'd underestimated me completely. She thought I was the devoted, trusting husband, too in love to see what was happening under my own roof. She'd counted on my affection, making me blind to her deception. But I hadn't survived 3 combat tours in hostile territory by being naive. I'd survived by being smarter, faster, and more ruthless than my enemies when necessary. I walked back into the house, my expression carefully neutral. Diana was in the kitchen now, wearing her bathrobe and looking pale and fragile. "Hey, honey," she said softly, touching her temple. "Sorry about dinner. The migraine was really severe today." I smiled, kissing her cheek while fighting the revulsion churning in my gut. "No problem at all. I've got everything covered. Why don't you rest?" She touched my face gently. "You're so good to me. I honestly don't know what I'd do without you." I watched her walk away, marveling at her performance. This woman who'd shared my bed for a decade, who'd given birth to our daughter, was plotting my complete destruction with cold calculation. That night, after Diana took her usual cocktail of sleeping pills that kept her unconscious until morning, I sat in my home office and began working. I did a complete sweep of the room for hidden cameras or recording devices using techniques I'd learned in military intelligence. The room was clean. I opened my laptop, but didn't log into regular accounts. Instead, I accessed a secure browser I'd hidden in my system files, old habits from my service days that I'd maintained even in civilian life. I started researching Dr. Victor Chen thoroughly. He was 42 years old, a successful physician with privileges at County Medical, divorced 3 years ago under contentious circumstances where his ex-wife claimed infidelity. 2 formal complaints filed with the state medical board, both dismissed due to insufficient evidence. A civil lawsuit from a former patient that was settled out of court with a confidentiality agreement. The man wasn't clean by any measure. I dug deeper using resources most civilians didn't know existed. Military connections and intelligence databases I technically shouldn't still have access to, but did. Within 2 hours, I'd built a comprehensive profile. Dr. Chen was ambitious, narcissistic, with a documented pattern of relationships with vulnerable women. He'd been investigated twice for insurance fraud, but never formally charged. His financial records showed significant debt from his divorce settlement, malpractice insurance premiums, and what appeared to be a gambling problem. Next, I examined Diana's recent behavior through this new lens of understanding. The constant medical appointments, the mysterious ailments, the growing emotional distance between us. I'd attributed everything to stress and health issues. I'd been completely wrong. I pulled up our bank statements and investment accounts. Everything appeared normal initially. But then I noticed Diana had opened a separate credit card 6 months ago that she'd said was for emergencies only. The statements showed regular charges at expensive hotels in the city, high-end restaurants, jewelry stores. She was spending money on Victor, preparing for her new life with him, while simultaneously building a false narrative that would let her leave the marriage with Sarah, our house, and probably a substantial portion of my military pension. An encrypted email notification appeared on my screen, sent to an address I'd set up years ago and forgotten about. It was from Dr. Thompson. "Mr. Hayes, I assume you received the documents I sent through your daughter. I couldn't say everything in the note I included. Victor Chen is dangerous in ways you need to understand. He's done this before, helped women fake domestic violence to escape marriages. But really, he's grooming them, manipulating them, taking their assets, then discarding them when he's gotten what he wants. His ex-wife tried to warn me before she left town completely. Your wife is the 3rd woman I know of personally. The others ended very badly. One is currently in a psychiatric facility, another disappeared entirely, and hasn't been heard from in over a year. I have more evidence, but I can't turn it over without going through proper channels, and Victor has connections in the police department. I'm risking my career telling you this, but your daughter is my daughter's best friend. I couldn't stand by and watch this happen. Be extremely careful. Victor knows how to work the system perfectly. If you confront them directly, you'll lose everything. You need to be smarter than him. I read the message 3 times, committing every word to memory before deleting it completely. Dr. Thompson had given me an invaluable gift: information, warning, and, most critically, an ally. But she was absolutely right. Confronting them directly would be self-destructive. Diana and Victor had spent months building their case carefully. They had documentation, medical records, a narrative that would hold up in any court. If I went to the police with accusations, they'd see a dangerous veteran making threats against his supposedly mistreated wife and her caring doctor. They'd probably arrest me on the spot, giving Diana exactly what she wanted. Over the following 2 weeks, I built my case with methodical precision. I installed a military-grade GPS tracking device under Diana's car bumper at 5 in the morning before she woke up. The device was impossible to detect without specialized equipment. I hired a former military intelligence colleague named Jake Rodriguez who owed me a favor from our service days together. Jake was discreet, thorough, and had absolutely no connections to anyone in our city. "This is brutal, brother," Jake told me during one of our secure phone calls after he'd been investigating for just 3 days. "Your wife's really going for your throat. But here's what you need to know. Victor Chen has done this before. 3 years ago in Nevada, similar situation exactly. A woman claimed domestic misuse. Chen was her treating physician. They had an affair. She divorced her husband and received a substantial settlement. Then Chen systematically cleaned out her bank accounts and disappeared. She tried to sue him, but he'd covered his tracks legally. She ended up financially ruined and psychologically broken. Your wife isn't his romantic partner, man. She's his mark. He's planning to take her money and run after helping her frame you." I documented 17 separate meetings between Diana and Victor at various hotels over 2 weeks. I photographed them entering and leaving, captured timestamps, gathered irrefutable evidence of their affair. Jake pulled Victor's financial records through methods I didn't ask about. He's deep in debt, medical malpractice insurance, expensive divorce settlement, gambling problem. Your wife isn't his lover, Marcus. She's his retirement plan. The breaking point came when I found Diana's burner phone hidden in a shoebox in the back of her closet. The text messages told me everything I needed to know. "Victor, it needs to happen this weekend. I've got the psychiatric evaluation ready. Just one more incident, something severe. Then we call the police and it's done." Diana's message was followed by Victor's response. "Are you scared? What if he fights back?" Diana replied, "He won't. He's too controlled, too worried about his precious image. He'll take the arrest quietly and try to prove his innocence through proper legal channels. By the time he realizes what's happening, it'll be too late. Trust me, baby. Soon you'll be free, rich, and we'll be together forever." But the message that made my hands shake with pure rage was their discussion about Sarah. "What about your daughter?" Victor had asked. Diana's response was chilling. "Full custody, obviously. We can always send her to boarding school if she becomes a problem. I want to start fresh with you, not be tied down by a 9-year-old. Victor replied, "Perfect. There are excellent schools in Europe. Very expensive, very exclusive, very far away." They were discussing sending my daughter away like she was an inconvenience, a problem to be managed and discarded. I'd been planning to expose them legally and professionally. But this threat to Sarah changed everything fundamentally. This made it deeply personal in a way that transcended law and conventional morality. I made a series of calls to Jake, to Dr. Thompson, and to several other contacts from my military days whose skills existed in legal gray areas. People who understood that sometimes justice required methods the courts couldn't officially acknowledge. "You sure about this path?" Jake asked during our final planning call. "Once you start down this road, there's no coming back to who you were before." I responded simply, "They threatened Sarah. They talked about sending my daughter away like she's garbage." Jake's response was immediate. "Say no more. I'm all in with whatever you need." That Friday evening, Diana was visibly tense and distracted, constantly checking her phone and glancing at me nervously. Victor had obviously told her tonight was when their plan would be executed. Sarah was safely at Katie's house for a sleepover. Dr. Thompson had suggested it without me asking, understanding instinctively that something significant was about to happen, and Sarah needed to be protected and away from whatever was coming. At 9 o'clock, Diana poured me a glass of wine, something she rarely did anymore. "I thought we could talk," she said, her voice strained with barely concealed anxiety. About us. About our marriage and where things are going. I took the glass but didn't actually drink, just pretended to sip. I'd expected exactly this. The wine was probably laced with something to make me disoriented and easier to control when they staged their final attack. "What about our marriage?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral and curious. Diana twisted her hands nervously. "I just feel like we've been distant lately, like you're angry with me about something I can't quite identify." I set the glass down carefully. "Why would I be angry with you?" She stammered. "I don't know. Maybe I'm imagining it. Maybe it's my anxiety. Victor thinks I might need medication for it. Victor thinks a lot of things about you, doesn't he?" My tone was mild, almost conversational, but Diana froze completely. "What do you mean by that?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I looked directly into her eyes. "How long have you been sleeping with him, Diana?" The question hung in the air between us like a blade. Diana's mouth opened and closed several times, shock and panic warring visibly on her face. This wasn't how their plan was supposed to unfold. She was supposed to provoke me, make me angry, create the confrontation they could twist and use against me in court. Instead, I sat calmly, watching her with the cold assessment of a sniper lining up a shot. "I don't know what you're talking about," Diana finally managed to say, but her voice lacked any conviction. I pulled out my phone, not my regular one, but a secure device Diana didn't know existed, and showed her photographs. Her car at the Belmont Hotel with timestamps. Victor entering the same hotel minutes later. Images showing the overlap of their visits spanning weeks. "You've been meeting him 3 times weekly for the past 2 months, I said calmly. Before that, it was once weekly for 6 months total. I have documentation of every single meeting." Diana's eyes widened in genuine shock. "You've been following me? Spying on me?" I shook my head. "No, I've been protecting my family from what I now understand is a conspiracy. I know about the fake injuries you've been inflicting on yourself. I know about the falsified medical reports. I know Victor's been helping you build a domestic violence case against me that's completely fabricated. I know about the offshore account and the LLC you created. I know about the money you've been systematically funneling away from our joint accounts. I know about the plan to sedate me tonight, stage a severe attack, and have me arrested. Diana, I know absolutely everything you've done." "You're insane," Diana whispered, but her voice completely lacked conviction. "Am I?" I smiled without any warmth. "Is that the story you're planning to go with? Here's what was supposed to happen tonight. You were going to stage some kind of severe attack, weren't you? Victor probably gave you pills to put in my wine to make me groggy and easier to manipulate. Then you'd injure yourself significantly, call the police, and I'd be arrested as a violent, unstable veteran with PTSD. Victor would document everything medically, providing expert testimony about the pattern of misuse he'd been documenting for months. I'd lose Sarah, lose my assets, probably lose my freedom, and then Victor would systematically take everything you'd accumulated in the divorce and leave you broken just like he's done to other women before you." Diana's face had gone from pale to completely ashen. "Other women? What are you talking about?" I leaned forward. "You think you're the first? Victor Chen has done this exact scenario at least 3 times before in different states. You're just the latest in a clear pattern. And when he's drained you financially dry, he'll move on to the next vulnerable woman who thinks he's her savior and truly cares about her." "No," Diana shook her head in denial. "No, that's not true. Victor loves me. He told me he loves me and wants to build a life together." I showed her Jake's documentation, the other victims, the pattern of financial exploitation. "He said exactly what you needed to hear, just like he's been saying for months now. You've been played, Diana, used. And you were so desperate to believe someone truly cared about you that you didn't see it happening." Diana collapsed onto the couch, her hands shaking uncontrollably. "What are you going to do to me?" she asked, her voice small and frightened. "That depends entirely on what you do next," I replied. "You have a choice right now. You can continue playing Victor's game, in which case I'll release everything I have to the police, the medical board, and the media. You'll go to prison for conspiracy and fraud. Sarah will know exactly what you tried to do to her father. Or you can help me destroy Victor Chen completely and utterly, in a way he can never recover from or hurt anyone else again." Diana stared at me, and I could see the calculations happening behind her eyes. She was trapped and knew it. Finally, looking at the evidence of Victor's other victims, she asked, If I help you, what happens to me? I replied, that depends entirely on how convincing you are, how far you're willing to go to make this right, and whether you can prove you deserve any mercy at all. Over the next 3 days, I transformed Diana from adversary into asset. Fear is a powerful motivator, and once she fully understood the depth of Victor's deception, seeing evidence of the other women he destroyed, and the pattern of financial exploitation, her fury became useful to my purposes. She was angry at being used, angry at being manipulated, and that anger I could direct toward Victor. She agreed to wear a sophisticated wire provided by Jake and gather evidence, getting Victor to confess to everything on tape. The plan executed perfectly. Diana told Victor they needed to move faster, that I was getting suspicious, that they needed to act immediately. Come to the house tonight, she told him, her voice shaking with what he'd interpret as fear, but was actually barely controlled rage. Marcus will be at the gym. We can stage everything, call the police, and it'll be done. By tomorrow, he'll be in custody, and we'll finally be free to be together. Victor agreed immediately, his greed overriding any caution. That evening, while I was supposedly at the gym, but actually parked nearby monitoring everything through security cameras Diana hadn't known existed, Victor arrived at our house with a medical bag. The cameras captured everything in high definition. Victor entering, discussing with Diana in explicit detail how they'd stage the scene, what injuries would be most convincing, how they'd manipulate the evidence to ensure my arrest and conviction. Remember, Victor said, his voice calm and clinical as he prepared syringes, you need to look terrified, traumatized, like you barely escaped with your life tonight. Can you do that convincingly? Diana replied. I've been doing exactly that for months now. And there was an edge to her voice that Victor completely missed in his arrogance. Good, he continued, because this is it, baby. After tonight, you're free. We're free. And with the settlement from the divorce, plus the insurance money from his veterans' benefits, we'll have more than enough to start over somewhere beautiful. Maybe Italy or the south of France, somewhere we can enjoy life properly. What about Sarah? Diana asked, her voice carefully controlled. Victor actually shrugged dismissively. Kids are resilient. She'll adjust eventually. And if she doesn't, well, there are excellent boarding schools for troubled children. We can send her somewhere she'll be properly cared for while we enjoy our life together without complications. That's when Diana said with pure venom, You absolute son of a witch! Victor froze, suddenly realizing something was very wrong. What did you say? Diana stood up, fury radiating from her. Marcus told me about the others. The women you did this exact thing to before, how you used them and left them completely broken. He told me about Jessica in Nevada, about Jennifer in California, about how you're not planning to stay with me at all, how you're going to take all the money and disappear just like you always do. Victor's expression hardened instantly. Diana, honey, whatever Marcus told you is lies designed to turn you against me. Don't you see what he's doing? He's manipulating you. Diana pulled out her phone, showing him the recording app that had been running throughout their entire conversation. Proof that you just confessed to everything on camera, every word about conspiracy, fraud, and manipulating me. Victor's face went pale, then flushed red with fury. You stupid! He lunged toward her violently, and that's precisely when I emerged from the garage where I'd been listening to everything. Don't even think about touching her, Chen. Victor spun around, and for the first time, I saw genuine fear cross his face. I wasn't the mild-mannered, trusting husband anymore. I was a ranger, a combat veteran, and in that moment, Victor saw exactly what he'd tried to destroy, a trained warrior who'd been holding back only through choice, not inability. Marcus, Victor said, raising his hands and trying to salvage the situation through manipulation. Let's talk about this rationally. I can explain everything if you'll just listen for a moment, I responded coldly. Explain what exactly? How you've been manipulating my wife for months, faking medical records to build a false misuse case, conspiring to have me arrested on completely fabricated charges. Or maybe you want to explain the other women you victimized, because I've found 3 of them, Victor, and they're all very eager to talk to investigators now that they know they're not alone. Victor's eyes darted toward the door, calculating escape routes desperately. You have no proof, nothing that would actually hold up in any court. I pulled out my phone, showing him the live feed from multiple hidden cameras positioned throughout the house. I have you on video discussing in explicit detail how to fake evidence and confessing to conspiracy. I have bank records showing financial fraud. I have testimony from Dr. Thompson about your pattern of malpractice and manipulation. I have statements from your previous victims. I have enough proof to bury you completely, Victor. Your career is over. Your freedom is over. Everything you've built is about to come crashing down." Outside, sirens began wailing, growing closer. I'd already contacted state police and the FBI about patterns of medical fraud and conspiracy. Victor looked around wildly, trapped, his perfect plan collapsing around him. He'd been so certain he was smarter, more careful, completely untouchable. He'd never considered he might be hunting someone more dangerous than himself. As police entered and arrested Victor, reading him his rights, I stood back and watched, but I knew this wasn't completely finished. Through Jake's investigation, I'd learned Victor had a half-brother named Ray McMullen, who'd been operating as his enforcer for years, intimidating previous victims into silence. Ray had a history of violence and wouldn't take his brother's arrest lightly. 3 days after Victor's arrest, someone tried to bypass the locks on my back door at 2 a.m. Security cameras caught a male figure fleeing. The next night, someone slashed my truck tires. Ray was probing my defenses, testing my responses, learning my patterns before making his real move. I moved Sarah to stay with Dr. Thompson and Katie, explaining there were safety concerns. Then I turned my home into a fortress with cameras, reinforced locks, motion sensors, and a security team of former military friends monitoring everything around the clock. The attack came at my workplace. I stayed late one evening to finish paperwork, and when I walked to my truck in the empty parking lot, Ray stepped out from between vehicles. "Marcus Hayes," he said, his voice flat and emotionless. "You destroyed my brother's life." I assessed the situation instantly. No witnesses, no cameras in this section, Ray blocking my path. This was his planned confrontation. "Your brother destroyed his own life," I replied calmly, keeping my posture relaxed but ready. "I just exposed what he'd been doing for years." Ray moved closer, and I saw he was holding a telescoping baton. "Family doesn't abandon family," he said coldly. "You're a dangerous veteran who attacked me when I confronted you. I had to defend myself. Tragic that you didn't survive." Ray swung the baton viciously at my head, but I'd been expecting it. I'd spent 12 years training for combat, learning to read opponents, to anticipate attacks. I blocked the baton with my forearm, painful but not disabling, and countered with a palm strike to his throat followed by a knee to his midsection. Ray staggered back, surprised by my swift response. We fought in that parking lot, 2 trained fighters measuring each other's capabilities. Ray had size and the tool. I had skill and righteous fury. When Ray overextended on a strike, I moved inside his guard, grabbed his wrist, used a joint lock to force him to drop the baton, then swept his legs and sent him crashing to the pavement. Ray pulled a knife from his boot, slashing upward. I jerked back, the blade cutting my shirt but missing flesh. I reacted on pure instinct with a disarming technique followed by a strike to his knife hand. The knife clattered away. I tackled him, pinning him face down. "It's over," I commanded. "Your brother is going to prison, and if you don't stop right now, you'll join him." Police sirens approached. Jake had been monitoring and called them when the confrontation started. As officers arrested Ray, reading his rights, I stood back breathing hard, adrenaline fading. Ray McMullen, the final piece of Victor's conspiracy, was neutralized. The sentencing hearing for Dr. Victor Chen took place 4 weeks later. Victor now faced not only his original charges, but additional conspiracy charges related to Ray's attempted homicide of me. Phone records between Victor and Ray, obtained through warrant, showed coded language that made clear Ray had been acting on Victor's orders. The judge was not sympathetic. "Dr. Chen, you have used your position, your education, and your skills to prey upon vulnerable women for years. You have committed fraud, conspiracy, and orchestrated violence against those who exposed your crimes. You have shown no remorse, no acknowledgement of the pain you've caused." She sentenced him to 30 years in federal prison, with no possibility of parole for 15 years. Additionally, he was ordered to pay restitution totaling $2.3 million to his victims. His medical license was permanently revoked. Ray received 15 years for attempted homicide. Diana received probation after her full cooperation and testimony against Victor. She completed therapy requirements, community service, and cooperation with all investigations. The judge gave her probation instead of prison time, recognizing her role as a manipulated victim who'd ultimately helped bring Victor down. 2 years later, I'm watching Sarah play in our backyard with Katie. The girls are laughing, chasing each other with water balloons, embodying the innocence childhood should have. Dr. Rachel Thompson sits next to me, sipping lemonade and smiling at the scene. She's remarkably resilient, Rachel observes. After everything she's been through, she still finds joy so easily. She's stronger than I am sometimes, I admit. The therapist says she's processing everything in a healthy way, that she understands her mother made mistakes but doesn't blame herself for any of it. Diana lives nearby now, sees Sarah regularly with gradually decreasing supervision, and is genuinely working to be a better person and mother. She found work at a nonprofit helping women escape actual domestic violence and is by all accounts trying to redeem herself. "You did good, Marcus," Rachel says quietly. "You protected your family, stopped a predator, helped multiple victims find justice, and somehow managed not to lose yourself in the process. That takes rare strength." I think about the year of planning, investigating, and strategizing that led to Victor's downfall. I had help. You, Jake, Sarah, even Diana eventually. I couldn't have done it alone. Later that evening, after Rachel and Katie have gone home and Sarah is in bed, I sit in my office reviewing the last pieces of the case. All civil suits have been settled. Victor's assets were liquidated to pay victims. His medical license is formally and permanently revoked. Ray is serving his 15 years. It's over. Truly, completely over. I burned the folder Dr. Thompson gave me a year ago in my fireplace, watching the papers curl and blacken. Letting go of the physical evidence feels symbolic, a way of releasing the anger and constant vigilance that consumed me for so long. My phone buzzes with a message from Jake. "Heard the news. Victor tried to appeal his sentence. Denied. That door is officially closed. Congratulations, brother. You won every round." I walk upstairs to check on Sarah. She's sleeping peacefully, clutching a stuffed bear, her face relaxed and innocent. This is what I'd been fighting for, not revenge, not justice in the abstract, but this moment of peace. My daughter safe and happy, dreaming without nightmares. I kiss her forehead gently. "I love you, princess. You never have to be afraid again. I promise." For the first time in a year, I sleep deeply without hypervigilance, without nightmares, without constant planning for the next confrontation. I'd won not just against Victor and Ray, but against the fear and betrayal that had threatened to destroy everything. I'd protected my family, achieved justice, and emerged stronger. The reckoning was complete. And now, finally, I could rest and build a better future for Sarah and myself.